Good afternoon. My name is Claire Clark and I am from Dynham. We are supporting Highlands and Islands Enterprise to deliver this event today. It's great to have you all with us for this next session in our NEXUS webinar series. A very warm welcome to you all. Before I pass you over to Andrea McCall from High, I'd just like to spend a minute explaining how we will run today's webinar. As an audience member, you are automatically muted, but we have a couple of ways for you to get actively involved. You can use your question box at any point throughout the webinar, and we will pick up as many as we can during the Q&A. You'll also see an icon called the raised hand icon, and during question time, if you've got a mic and you want us to take you off mute so you can connect directly with our speaker, then just click on the icon and we'll get you connected. And finally, we always want to promote knowledge sharing and collaboration, so we do record every session. We will, of course, share the recording after the event, so you can watch again or share with anyone else you think may be interested. That's all from me just now. I'll pass you over to Andrea, who will introduce today's speaker. Andrea.
Hello, thank you very much, Claire, for the introduction. Yes, I'm Andrea McCall. I work in the Life Sciences team at Highlands and Islands Enterprise in Inverness. And I just want to give you a quick intro before I hand over to my colleague, Karen. So the NEXUS webinar series is an opportunity to find out more about what's going on in our life sciences, health and technology community, and also make new connections. And in case you don't know, NEXUS is our co-working space in Solaster House on Inverness Campus, where we have life sciences and technology companies who are co-locating and collaborating. And NEXUS is funded by the Inverness City Region Deal and European funding. So obviously it's very topical that we have my colleague Karen here, who's been involved in the development of the campus since 2008, which is a very long time. So it's great to have her with us today to tell us a little bit more about what's actually going on the campus at the moment. There's always so much happening around new buildings, new tenants, other activities. So I'm really delighted she can join us today and give us a bit of an insight on where we are now and where we will be in the future. So over to you, Karen.
It's really good to see so many people have managed to take the time to join us today. So thanks very much for that. I guess I'm assuming that many of the folk who are tuned in today are familiar with the campus in some way or other. Maybe you work here, or perhaps students who live here or study. And then there's a whole variety of folk who use it for recreation. They might walk the dog, they might teach their kids to cycle or go for a run there. The campus means a whole lot of different things to different people. So you may not have had the chance to visit recently with all the restrictions around COVID, but there has been plenty going on. Now, I am trying to change my slides here, but here we go. There we are. So the mix that I talked about there is really good, because the whole idea with the campus is that it's not just one thing. It's not just an academic campus, and neither is it just a business park. There's a range of activity that goes on right across the site. And also of quite a mixed scale, so from quite large organisations with many employees right down to the two-person band. It's always been really, really important that it's very accessible to the community and has really good links with the community as well. And that's part of the reason why we're delighted that people like to use it for recreation and that they feel comfortable coming into the site and using it for walking, running, etc. But probably the most important thing about the whole campus is at the very core of what we're doing here is collaboration, and it's encouraging people to work together and to get the most out of the fact that they are collaborating. So when we first took the idea of the campus to the High Board, and when I say we here, the campus is owned and has been developed by Highlands and Islands Enterprise, but it certainly hasn't been a solo effort. There has been a lot of work from partners, and the development of the site has been very much with a range of different partners. So we took this to the High Board, and at that point it was quite unusual in that we were presenting a 30-year plan. That was how long we expected it to take to develop this site. And some of the words that you can see on the slide there are really the kind of things that we all as partners felt that this new site that we were going to develop, they describe what we wanted it to be like. So perhaps just to pull out a few of those, it was really important that it was going to be a place that people could connect and work together. The idea is it's a location where people can create knowledge, whether it's because they're learning through UHI, or whether they're researchers, or perhaps they are companies who are involved in knowledge industries. The feel of the campus was that we wanted it to be inspiring. People wanted to be there and felt that they were getting something from it, but also that it was really open and welcoming, and that people felt comfortable in visiting and using it. And in terms of what it looked like, we wanted it to feel like it was part of the Highlands and it reflected the Highlands. But also from the very beginning, it was important that there was that longevity there, that and people do comment on that about the campus. It feels like it has been established for much longer than the number of years it's been opened. It opened to the public in 2015, but some of the things that have been used in the campus, for instance, having the lochans in the middle of the campus area, makes it feel as if it's been much longer established. So just in preparing for doing this webinar with you, I looked back at some of the original images that we had when we first proposed the campus. So this one that you can see was really part of the planning application back in 2009. So that was what our master planners, the architects, thought that the campus might look like when it was built out. And that's what it was like last summer. So we're making some pretty good progress, and I think this image shows well that it's really beginning to be built out now. And there are 17 plots across this first phase of the campus, and 12 of them are already either filled or under construction. So we're making some pretty good progress in terms of that first phase. So on this slide here, where we've got the red line outline, that shows what that first phase is. It's about 100 acres that we've developed so far. The whole of the campus area is just short of 215 acres. So this slide shows where the future phases are. And those of you who are really quick off the mark with the sums will realise that that doesn't add up to 215, but part of the reason for that is that we have had to keep part of the land free because there is a proposal that there will be a link road that goes from the A96 across towards the A9, and you can see some of the initial routes that were suggested for this marked on this map, and that will go across the south end of the campus. So within the first phase, as I say, we feel that we're making some pretty good progress in terms of the buildings that have gone in there. I think almost everybody will be familiar with the largest building, which is Inverness College UHI, very prominent at the entrance to the campus. But we also have An Lochran, which is where Highlands and Islands are based, along with parts of UHI, and also the second university that's on the campus, which is Scotland's Rural College. We also have space in Aurora House and Solista House for businesses. There's student accommodation. There is some purpose-built private business accommodation, such as that for Scottish Vet Referrals. And there are a number of projects that are underway. You may not have been to the campus recently, but if you've been going past on the A9, I'm sure you've spotted that there is quite a bit going on. So for the first phase of the campus, we have permission to build 55,000 square meters of development. And as you can maybe see from the figure at the bottom of this slide, we're getting pretty close to that figure now, which is why we're now starting work on looking on phase 2. So phase 2 is at the south end of Inverness Campus. If you can see my cursor, it's round about this part here that we are starting work on. Part of the reason that we are starting work now and haven't done it previously was it was important to know what the route of that road that I mentioned earlier was going to be at the south end. That appears to be a bit more defined now, and therefore we can start on phase 2. The focus of phase 2 is likely to be on more units for businesses. So in terms of what we're doing at the campus, certainly some folk who might ask, why is Highlands and Islands Enterprise involved in this development? Why have we taken a lead in it? And it's very much that the campus is seen as being a key driver in sustainable economic development for the whole of the region. And so we're looking at who we can attract to the site. And as Andrea had mentioned earlier, generally speaking, we're looking at businesses and organisations who are involved in technology and life sciences. Even more important than that are those who would consider themselves, or we would consider to be, knowledge industries. So rather than being a producer of goods or manufacturer, they're involved in information and knowledge. The companies that we would like to be here are ones who want to be part of that collaborative ethos. They want to work together with others to develop new ideas, new services, perhaps new products. We're looking for companies that are considered to have good potential for sustainable growth, high growth. What a number of the companies who are here say is that the key benefit for them is not only the proximity to like-minded companies and organisations, but particularly being close and having access to the university, so to the University of the Highlands and Islands and to Scotland's Rural College, but also to the NHS. The kind of companies that we're looking for are pretty active in research, and we would want them to be on board as well with the campus vision and the development strategy. So these are some of the companies who are already here, 17 of them at the moment, quite a range of companies in terms of size, in terms of where the investment comes in. Some are quite homegrown, some are international companies or have international investment in them. The majority of them are involved in life sciences, and there is a range across animal health and human health there. We have some companies that started off and they were quite small. If we look at someone like ODX or Orbital Diagnostics, they started off and there was just, I think, 5 of them in a small office in NEXUS. They've now grown and they have well over 30 staff, and they have a whole floor in Solista House for their operations. And that's very much how we would like to see companies develop on the site. that through the likes of NEXUS, we're able to provide accommodation for relatively small scale operations, but then that they can grow and build and perhaps go into larger accommodation at different places on the campus. We've got some really innovative companies that are at the campus. Just to highlight one, which you may be aware of, Organ-like have a base in NEXUS. They are incredibly innovative. What they do is they produce ultra real organs, and they produce them by printing them in a 3D printer. And these organs can then be used, particularly in training of clinicians, particularly surgeons. And there has been a really close link between this company and the NHS, and it's helped NHS in terms of their surgical boot camps. The latest company to join us is Pharmac Analytique, which may be known to some of you as the Fish Vet Group. They've got a new lab that's in the Solista building, and although they are a smaller company, they are part of Zoetis, which is one of the world leaders in animal health. So we've been delighted to welcome them. And also really pleased to say that a lot of the companies that are in the buildings that we have at the campus have had a lot of success in working together. It might have come about because they happen to be neighbours, and I would say in the top left-hand corner here, Aseptium and 4C have been very successful at doing that, and the picture there shows the work that they did working together on producing PPE at the beginning of lockdown and COVID. Corporate Health International, which is a Danish company, and they analyse results that come from a tiny colon capsule, a camera that you can swallow, and it takes thousands of pictures of your insides as it goes through. And this is a technology which will in time replace the need to go for endoscopies in hospital. Benefit of that is obviously you don't have to have patients travelling long distances to go to hospital. It's not such an invasive procedure. The link up that Corporate Health International has had with other private companies, but particularly with the NHS, has meant that that technology has been rolled out from the trials that were done in the Highland area right across Scotland, and also is being adopted by health boards in England. So a good success story there. Maybe just to highlight one of the other good collaborations which we've got here is the Lyme app, which was a project which was led by Scotland's Rural College, working again with NHS, Highland and other private companies to develop an app which can track where ticks are in certain geographical areas. Why is this important? Because the ticks can carry Lyme disease, which can be quite problematic, and this gives an idea of where the concentrations of ticks are going to be. So this is just a selection of the collaborations. There are many, many that could give examples of. So the new projects that are on site, at the top there we have the Life Science Innovation Centre. That is, if you have been on the campus, the big blue building on your right hand side as you come into the campus. This is a joint project between the University of the Highlands and Islands and Highlands and Islands Enterprise. It is due to complete at the end of this year and probably will open either the end of this year or very early next year. It will have spaces, labs and office space for businesses, similar to what we have in Solista and Aurora houses, but also it will have a dedicated space for UHI staff, particularly those specialising in life science research, nanotechnology, active health, and in addition to that, there will be space for those UHI colleagues to work alongside NHS colleagues. And that's a building which has had funding from the EU, but also from the Inverness and Highlands City region deal. And the sister project to that is the one that you can see below, which is the National Treatment Centre Highland. This is a project that is being developed by NHS Highland. When that is complete, which I believe is at the end of this year, it is going to have a very big impact on the campus. It is a big building, as you can see from the image in the bottom right there. It is an elective care centre, so it will specialise in orthopaedics and ophthalmics. And will be serving the whole of the north of Scotland. So people will be travelling to the campus from quite a wide geography for treatments in those specialisms. It's likely to have about 200 plus staff there. There will be some inpatients, and the inpatients will have individual rooms in there, probably about 1,200 inpatients in a year. But what will make the biggest impact is the number of outpatients that will attend this facility, which is over 40,000 in a year. That will make the big difference to the campus. It'll also make a huge impact in terms of the collaborations between the clinicians that will work here, the patients that will be treated there, and some of our life science businesses. Another project that has been developed during lockdown is looking at better access to the campus. It's always been really important that people can get to and from and across the campus, that the campus is really well linked into the communities and to the city centre. And in order for the campus to keep developing in a sustainable way, we need to make sure that those links are good. So between ourselves at High, colleagues in UHI and NHS, we have a joint project where we have employed a travel and transport manager, which is Donald Hall, who's a chap you can see in the centre of the slide there. And Donald's been looking at different forms of transport to link the campus. So there's now a fleet of electric bikes for people to use. You can see the High bikes up the top left there. We've got new bus shelters across the whole site, and a range of new bus routes that come right into the heart of the campus. And all those bus shelters are linked up with real-time information, so you know when the next bus is going to come along and help you. We also have new infrastructure in terms of link paths. There is what we call the North Bridge, which links the campus across to the retail park. That's a bridge for pedestrians and cyclists, but also for the buses. And the very latest link, which has been developed by Highland Council, along with funding from Sustrans, the cycle charity, is the picture on the bottom left there. And that links the Golden Bridge into the Rigmore interchange and then on into the Milburn Road cycle route. So it is possible to travel from the campus and also from beyond the campus right into Inverness city centre, but being off-road all the way. So those have made everything a lot more accessible. We know the campus is well used by walkers and cyclists anyway, but we would like to see even more people making use of those facilities. A few other projects which are on the way. Scotland's Rural College are developing their own building at the campus at Plot 9, so that is between Solasta House and Lochran. It is a rural and veterinary innovation centre. It will house all the current parts of SRUC in Inverness. So their business advisory staff, their big epidemiology department, which is led by Professor George Gunn. It'll also have space for rural businesses to be based in there, particularly ones that have links up with what the Rural College is doing. There will be space for training, and in time they hope to develop also space for teaching of veterinary students as well. That one, we hope the construction, they have planning permission for that, construction will begin this year. Bottom image there is looking from the south of the campus, and in the foreground is plot 14. At the moment, the only building that's actually in there is the Scottish Vet Referrals, but the rest of that plot will be developed. We now have planning permission for that to be done, and that'll be a phased development. And the idea is that Highlands and Islands Enterprise as a developer will put in the infrastructure, and then there will be plots where individual businesses can do self-builds there, but probably on a much smaller scale than some of the other buildings across the campus. There are plans to put sports pitches in at the campus and also some associated changing facilities, etc. They will be going in plot 13, which is this big green space here. That project is probably going to be led by Highland Council, and we hope that that will start work this year. We've also been looking at some of the plots that are as yet unsold and undeveloped. The two that we're looking at in particular, plot 6, which is up at the north end, the top end of the campus, and plot 20, which is next door to the Life Science Innovation Centre. I'm looking at new ways in which business accommodation can be developed. With a very changing funding landscape, no EU funding available to help developments as has been in the past. We're looking in particular to see what partnerships we can develop with private developers to produce lab space and office accommodation for businesses to move into, and that's looking quite positive for those two plots. And finally, I guess just to mention the importance of having community involvement in the campus. We know over lockdown the campus was really busy with people. People had, when we were back in that time when you had half an hour that you could go out and take some exercise outside, people were coming to the campus and making the most of that. On average, there's about 10,000 people every month that cross the Golden Bridge on foot or on bike. It's well used, and that is a really important part of making the campus work. It's used for so many different things. The image in the middle there is the elite 5K race, which has been held over a number of summers, where you can run 5K around the Lochans in the campus in 15 minutes. Well, some people can anyway. To maybe not the other extreme. I'm sure my friends at the vets would forgive me for that comment, but you can see them there taking part in the jingle jog, where they're out walking and taking the dogs round. It is there for many people to use, and we're very keen to keep that balance there. It's not always an easy balance in terms of how the roads are used and who has priority and things like that. But having that mix makes the campus really the special place that it is. And just for the final slide, I guess I had to use the stars of Inverness Campus. For most people, for many people perhaps, the reason they come to the campus is to see the swans. The swans took up residence before anybody else did. They were there before 2015. They must have had a bit of a shock when people started to study and work there, but they have continued. And every year they have a whole bunch of cygnets, and it's the most photographed part of the campus. So thank you very much for listening. I'm very happy to take any questions if people do have them. If you want to find out a bit more about the campus, do come and visit or take a look at the website, which is invernesscampus.co.uk. And for the latest news, why not follow us on Twitter? We're at Inverness Campus. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. Sounds like you are as busy as ever. We have had a few questions submitted, but there's still time. So if you've got a question for Karen, use your question box and we'll get that straight to her. But we'll kick off with a question from Iona. With increasing numbers of people working at the campus, as well as increasing number of visitors, what plans are there for new facilities or services on site?
Well, I guess one of the things which has come up quite a lot from a number of colleagues, and particularly businesses who are based there, is over lockdown, a number of the catering facilities, the cafes that were available across the site have had to close. But still, people have been working there, and so they are interested to know what there's going to be. So what we are going to do this year is do a little trial of having an outside catering caravan that'll be located on the site, and hopefully that will help with that issue. Inverness College UHI do have a cafe which is increasingly available for people to use, but it just gives a wee bit of extra choice to have that there. So that pilot project will probably begin in a couple of months, and that'll be available 7 days a week as well. So not just for people who are based at the campus or working there, but for visitors as well. The other thing which people may not be aware of is that the nursery that was run by Inverness College UHI now has a new operator, an organisation called CALA, and so that nursery facility is open to people right across the campus. You don't have to be a student or an employee of Inverness College to be able to put your children into for daycare there. So that also might be something that's of interest to folk.
Great, thanks, Karen. Next question from Gary. Are there still plans for a hotel on site?
Good question. Yes, there are. Unfortunately, one of the things when COVID hit meant that the developer that was interested in taking forward the hotel decided that this wasn't the best time for that to happen. However, fairly recently we have had an inquiry about the hotel, and therefore we're looking again at advertising that opportunity. Obviously, the whole scene has changed very much in terms of the number of hotels that there are in the area, what kind of markets there are, but also the scene will change at the campus in terms of there being an awful lot more people there, and perhaps a reason for people to use the hotel at the campus. So it's something that's very much at the forefront of our minds just now.
Great, thank you. Next question from Jaya is, Karen, great presentation. It's amazing what goes on here. You mentioned it's a world-class location. You must have so many examples of world-class work coming from the campus.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of a lot of the collaborative work that goes on between the companies, particularly those in Aurora and Solasta houses, has really surprised people and really interested them as well. I think it's great to think that some of the work that's going on in the Highlands and Islands and is trialled in the Highlands and Islands is then something that is rolled out across the rest of the country. I mean, I mentioned what's happening with Corporate Health International and the colon capsule technology there. I think that possibly is one of the more successful. But if you look, for example, at some of the work that ODX is doing. Basically, they're involved in work with urinary tract infections, and they are trying to develop something that will very quickly detect resistance to antibiotics for those particular complaints. And I think that is going to have a huge impact, or could have a huge impact in terms of those people who suffer from those kinds of infections, but also how quickly health professionals are able to test and get back to their patients. So particularly on the life sciences side, there's some really exciting things that are happening there. I guess we just need to make sure that we're telling everybody about them.
That's amazing. Exciting, lots of exciting work happening there. Next question from Douglas. Do you know what the timeline is on the A96 to A9 road you mentioned earlier? So, i.e., when will construction start?
I'm afraid that's not really one that I can answer. It is being led by our colleagues at Highland Council, I think, in conjunction with Transport Scotland. And although we have had a lot of contact with them, particularly through their consultants, Jacobs, I'm not aware that we yet have a timeline on that, but there has been a lot of conversations about the route that the road will take and how that will link in to the campus. I guess it will depend on the availability of funding as to when exactly it'll go in.
Okay, so watch this space. Okay, next question from Jane is, given the delays within the construction industry, just in terms of supplies of materials, has this affected your timeline for development, building work, and what's going on in building in general within the campus?
Sounds like Jane probably has some experience of what some of the difficulties have been in construction. I think many people are aware that timelines have had to change considerably, costs have gone up, and there have been delays in being able to access the correct materials. I guess in terms of the two projects that are underway at the moment, the National Treatment Centre and the Life Science Innovation Centre, much of the planning for those projects had been done before COVID hit, and some of the difficulties that have been experienced around that. But they still have both been impacted by the availability of materials. And certainly going forward with the campus, costs have changed considerably, which is why we need to be looking at new ways of how we can fund things, how we're going to be able to do those phase 2 developments that have been in the planning for quite some time, because we're in quite a different world, as everybody knows.
Great, thanks, Karen. Okay, next question from Kate. The campus is a great place to be. Great talk, thank you. Slightly worrying, there are some degradations in some of the construction. So, i.e. stones in walls breaking off, stone in roads breaking off, cladding on student accommodation popping off. Do you know how these will be addressed to ensure a long-term, robust future for these assets so they can carry on looking amazing?
Well, basically, it is down to the owners of the buildings. The campus itself, as in the whole area, is owned by Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and our agency has developed some of the buildings like Anlochran, Solista and Aurora. But with other buildings, such as Inverness College, UHI, that plot was sold to UHI, and then they developed that fantastic building and the grounds around it. So the care and maintenance of that is down to their team, their FM team, and they will have a programme as to how they are doing that. Similarly, with the student accommodation, as I understand it, the ownership of that has changed in the last few years anyway, so it's now looked after by the university. So the university will have their own maintenance plan for those buildings there. Certainly as far as the buildings that HIE owns. We are always looking out there. There's always something to do. I was just on site this morning, walking around the site, and we were noticing a couple of things that needed work. In terms of the shared area, so basically that central area, which is around the Lochans, there's about 30 acres of that. The management of that is controlled by an organisation called the Inverness Campus Owners Association. So if you buy a bit of land at the campus, you become part of that grouping, and everyone takes a share in that management and maintenance. And there's an ongoing programme of works that need to be done for that, and a budget that goes with it. But yeah, it's not quite like painting the fourth bridge rather, but it certainly is an ongoing task there. And we are aware of some of the things that need to be done. If there are things that are in the common areas and you feel that they need some attention, then I would say please do get in contact, and we will see what we can do about them and how that can be added into the work programme.
Great, thanks, Karen. And we've just had a message from Gary Campbell, which really reinforces just what you're saying. So regarding the student accommodation, there is an existing plan in place to maintain and replace as necessary, and it sits with UHI. So that's from Gary.
Great. Good to hear.
Great. Okay, we've got a question from Ian Thorburn. With the new Inverness Arts Centre in the Crown area, is there a possible way to collaborate and bring art into the campus and the gallery area?
I think that's definitely a possibility, and I know that there are some very strong links between Inverness College UHI and the new Creative Academy. I believe that they have some accommodation in there. So I think that gives us a good basis for looking at that. As some of you will know, we have previously hosted exhibitions from some of the art students at the college in the island area and Chilin in the middle of the Lochans at the campus. I would really like to see that happening again. What would also be great is if we were able to host sculptures as we've done previously. We had the mini kelpies at the campus. They were hugely successful. And then we had the Moo Crew, if you remember those, which were the highly painted cows. And I would love to see that happen again.
Great, Karen, thank you. Another question from Jaya. Collaboration and partnership must have been and continues to be key. How do you get it to work so well?
I'm delighted to hear that folk think that it works very, very well. I think all those who are involved would say that it's something you always have to keep working at. I think the fact that the campus itself, in terms of the physical design of the buildings and the landscape, is very much about having lots of shared spaces, helps hugely in that. But things like the series of webinars that Andrea organises with Dynam are absolutely key for keeping people in contact. Prior to COVID, we were able to meet up in person, and there were quite a number of networking events. They were absolutely key as well. Very simple things like having catering areas where people happen to bump into each other in that common space are important as well, because that casual conversation can lead to a new project, a new business relationship. But it is absolutely something that we have to keep working at all the time in terms of linking people up. Through High, we do have other ways of if you like, incentivizing that, because we have a small funding scheme where we can put some seed corn funding, some low-level funding to start off new collaborations where there's going to be a commercial output. We had some very good projects that went through that in the first round, and we're hoping to do that again and publicise that later this year.
Great, thanks, Karen. So we've had a lovely message from Claire and a question from Neil that kind of tie in together. So message from Claire, So good to hear how developed the 30-year vision has become in only a short 7 years. Good collaborations and partnerships, exciting times ahead. So thanks, Claire, for that lovely message. And then a question from Neil, which ties in really nicely. You mentioned a 30-year vision for developing the site. How do you think the campus will look once it's been open for 30 years?
Very good question. Yeah, I guess I would hope that we would see the phases that I described developed out, with more businesses based at the campus. Personally, I think some of the transport issues that I mentioned are absolutely key. So I would like to see it as a very sustainable site where people were using lots of active travel, but we still have that balance with great community use. I think that we will probably see even more development from academic partners across various parts of the campus. And I also think that although it will be a phased approach, I think we will see the much hoped for sports facility develop out over that kind of time period. We've done a wee bit of sort of looking to the future in terms of how many people might work here, how many students there might be here, how many companies. At the moment, we've got our 17 companies. I think probably certainly by 2025, we're probably going to be more like 30, 35 companies then. We've got 900 people who work on site at the moment. I think we'll see that jump up quite considerably over the next few years, particularly as we welcome in colleagues from the NHS. So I think the campus is going to continue to be quite a busy place where people want to be, because there's going to be a lot going on there. And I guess as Inverness develops as a city, and at the moment the campus is seen as being on the outskirts of the city, but I think there's going to be a lot more building that will appear around the campus, and it will feel very much part of the whole city.
Great, that's a great vision, Karen, for the campus. We've got one last question, and then time for one last question, and then we'll have to wrap up. So last question is from Kate. Previously, rental costs were impacted by the EU state funding. Since the new phase won't have this funding, will this improve the flexibility to offer more market-based rents to businesses?
If I understand what you're asking, I think this is about business rental cost for office and labs.
So she's saying, so she's followed up again, just saying, just wondering if the funding, is it the funding chaos funding will introduce more commercial, basically will it introduce more commercial flexibility really?
I think I'm going to ask Andrea to help with that one, as she tends to be a bit more involved in terms of certainly the NEXUS accommodation there.
Kate's saying, sorry,
yeah.
Kate's just saying, yeah, that's right. That's what she's looking for.
I mean,
Thanks,
I'm not directly involved in you know, in the property side of things, of, you know, the leases and the rental rates, but my understanding is that the rental rates for any business units, labs, offices within our buildings on the campus are based on commercial competitive rates, and so I don't really think there will be much of a difference going forward necessarily, because that's not really what the funding was used for in the past that was available. So obviously different buildings offer you different things. So Aurora House and Solister House, they are, you know, business only accommodation. So there's only individual business units in it. There's no shared reception. The LSIG building that Karen mentioned earlier, that we will be sharing with the university, will have much more an open feel, and we'll have a reception like is the case in Lochran. So if you as a business look at taking a suite in that part of the the campus, then you would get a different service as part of your rental package, so to speak. So that will have an impact on the price that you would pay, depending on which building you would choose to locate in, for example. I think that's really the most important thing that will determine what the rental rates are in different parts of the campus.
Great, thanks so much, Andrea, and thanks so much, Karen, for your time today and your super interesting presentation and chat with us there. There's so much going on. It's great to see all the developments and how busy you guys have been, and so much planned for the rest of the year and the future. So yeah, thanks so much. I'll just now pass over to Andrea, who will now say the final few words.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks, Karen. That was really great to get this really good overview of what's been happening and what is going to happen as well. I just wanted to close the webinar with just a quick highlight on what we were planning to do over the next few months. We have a few health-related topics planned as part of our webinar series. I haven't got the final dates confirmed yet, but please have a look on our social media and also on our website, and you can see on hi.co.uk/events, you will find all the details as and when they become available. So we're going to talk about rethinking remote healthcare. We're going to talk about diabetes in early April, then about eyes and bones, if you want to call it that, all associated with the topics that are relating to the National Treatment Centre that Karen mentioned earlier, and the elective types of elective surgery that will be taking place on the campus. And then just in late May, finishing before the summer holidays, around health products that can be purchased directly by consumers as well. And one more plug for another program of ours, which is the Pathfinder program. So this is a business support program for Highlands and Islands based companies who would like to launch a new business or a new product or service. And we actually have an application deadline tomorrow for our next cohort, focusing on animal health and aquaculture. But if you're interested in taking part in the future, please don't hesitate to inquire now, because we're starting the next cohort in May this year. And again, on a rolling basis thereafter. So please get in touch. Find us on the Pathfinder website on hi.co.uk/Pathfinder. And that's really it from me. And thank you again, everyone, for joining. I've had a lot of interest in the webinar today. It's fantastic to see that. And thank you, Karen, for your time and taking us through the campus and all that's part of it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andrea. On behalf of Highlands and Islands Enterprise, thank you very much for a great session today, Karen, and a final big thank you to everyone that came in to join the webinar. It was great to see so many of you join us today. Our post-event survey will pop up straight after this session, so if you can spare a couple of minutes, it would be great if you could complete that for us. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.